Out in the wilderness, a terrified father stood between a monster and his young son, desperately trying to keep the creature away. The boy lay frozen on the ground behind him. Both of them were level 1 villagers. Just as the monster closed in, a young man calmly picked up a small rock. After a quick glance, he flicked it with a single finger. The tiny stone shot through the air like a bullet. It pierced straight through the monster. The creature exploded instantly. The father and son could only stare in complete disbelief. Neither of them could process what had just happened. Without saying a word, the young man casually walked over, checking on them before collecting the pile of coins the monster had dropped. The father remained speechless, his mouth hanging open. The young man scooped up the coins, placed them into a small bag, and casually confirmed that they both looked unharmed. Still stunned, the father finally managed to ask if he had really saved them. He couldn't understand how it was even possible. The level 1 villager status window above both the father and son made it clear exactly who they were. The young man simply explained that he had only flicked a rock. Then he thanked them for showing him something. The father and son froze again. A rock. Ignoring their confusion, the young man tossed the bag of coins to the little boy. The child caught it instinctively before staring at the heavy pouch in total disbelief. His father hesitated as he looked inside. The young man explained that the slime had dropped exactly 100 bronze coins. Now they belonged to them. He pointed out that defeating a single slime earned 100 bronze. That was a pretty amazing reward. The boy suddenly shook his head over and over. The reaction completely caught the young man off guard. Even if the money could buy sweets and toys, it didn't matter. The child sadly knew the truth. A villager could never defeat a green slime. The young man looked at him with quiet understanding. That really was unfortunate. Since everything seemed settled, he figured it was time to head back to town. Lunch was waiting. As he turned to leave, the boy quickly called out, wondering who he really was. Could someone like him actually be a hero? The young man simply glanced back. Not even close. With one casual motion, he revealed his status window. The father and son nearly lost their minds. Kagami Kuji. Class, Villager. Level, 999. A level 999. Villager. The weakest class in existence had somehow reached the highest level imaginable. Completely unfazed by the shock he had left behind, Kagami casually continued toward town. Hekisaldoria is an island nation that was once known as Japan. Long ago, monsters didn't exist. Then, almost overnight, they appeared and spread across the world at an unimaginable speed. Before long, nearly 80% of the planet became too dangerous for humans to live in. But at the exact moment monsters were born, humanity received something in return. Every person was assigned a class at birth. Those classes determined the role they would play in life. There were fighters, warriors, priests, thieves, merchants, hunters, and shamans. Among them, 8 classes were considered gifted. Above those stood the 3 legendary classes known as the Chosen Ones, the King, the Sage, and the Hero. And then there was the class most people ended up with. The weakest class of all. Villagers. People whose lives revolved around simple work like building towns, running inns, and supporting society from behind the scenes. The free city of Valman. Kagami Kuji casually wandered through the busy streets, enjoying a bite of his meat. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed across the plaza. A young man stood atop a platform, passionately addressing the crowd. He questioned why monsters continued to exist. Why the weak had to rely on the strong just to survive. Why even young children were forced to carry swords instead of living peaceful lives. According to him, monsters served the demons. And as long as the Demon King remained undefeated, true peace would never come. From the edge of the crowd, Kuji watched the speech for a brief moment. Then he quietly dismissed it. Way too noisy. What a disturbance. Nearby, 2 men noticed another group passing through the city. One of them commented on how impressive a hero's party looked. His friend jokingly wondered if he could join them too. The bald man immediately brushed the idea aside. His friend was nothing more than a villager. The other man wasn't convinced. With a high enough level, even a villager could become incredibly strong. He wondered if raising his own level was possible. Kuji silently agreed. Exactly. That was what almost everyone believed. Far from the city, inside the ancient caves, a blue devil lunged straight toward Kuji. He calmly locked onto his target. Then one punch ended everything. The monster instantly burst into a shower of coins. As he collected the rewards, Kuji noticed something unusual. There were far more monsters than normal today. Maybe a spawn block was hidden somewhere nearby. If he found it before someone destroyed it, he could enjoy an endless monster farming session. Although, even if it disappeared, the monsters would probably respawn again anyway. That worked perfectly for him. It meant he could keep clearing quest after quest. He unfolded a quest sheet and checked his remaining objectives. Only a few left. Just then, another cave caught his attention. More monsters. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the entrance. But right before stepping inside, he suddenly stopped. Then slipped behind the cave wall. Someone else was already there. A hero's party. The hero effortlessly finished off a monster alongside his companions. Kuji frowned. There went another blue devil. Why were heroes wasting time here? Shouldn't they be out conquering Demon King's castles instead? One of the mages praised the hero's performance. The hero, Rex, confidently raised his sword. With everyone still in good condition, the party continued deeper into the cave toward their objective. Kuji quietly turned around. Good for them. Whatever their goal was, it had nothing to do with him. In the end, none of it really mattered. Still, they had the nerve to steal his blue devils. As he walked away, he suddenly froze. His eyes widened. Something was terribly wrong. In the distance, Kagami Kuji suddenly spotted 3 blue devils together. His eyes lit up. A cluster. One after another, the monsters fell under his attacks, bursting into piles of coins. One of them even dropped a rare item. A blue devil's horn. As long as it still contained magical energy, the item completely erased the hostility monsters normally directed toward its user. Kuji checked the quest sheet in his hand before flashing a satisfied grin. Today was definitely his lucky day. Not only had there been more monsters than usual, but rare monsters had been appearing everywhere. It was strange. Still, he wasn't about to complain. Only 3 blue devils remained before he could finish the quest. At this rate, he'd be done much earlier than expected. His thoughts immediately drifted toward dinner. The image alone was enough to make him drool. It wouldn't even be conveyor belt sushi. Just regular sushi. That was more than enough. Lost in the delicious fantasy, Kuji suddenly noticed someone quietly walking behind him. A little girl. What was a child doing all the way out here? And where was she going? He hurried after her and called out. She was heading straight toward a group of monsters. The girl never reacted. Kuji raised his voice, trying to stop her before she walked any farther. The monsters were right ahead. But the little girl simply continued walking. She passed directly beside the demons. None of them attacked. None of them even moved. Kuji froze. Were they asleep? Curious, he stepped toward the monsters himself. The moment he got close, one of them immediately locked onto him. Just as he expected, he crushed the monster without hesitation. While defeating the remaining demons, Kuji realized something strange. The monsters had reacted to him, but completely ignored the little girl. As the last demon disappeared, he looked deeper into the tunnel. Should he go after her? 5 minutes later, Kuji was still searching. Somehow, he had completely lost track of the girl. After wandering through the maze-like cave, he finally noticed light shining ahead. An exit? Before he could reach it, 2 demons suddenly blocked his path. He immediately engaged them. There were way too many monsters today. After bringing down the second demon, a sharp scream echoed through the cave. A child's scream. Kuji's expression changed instantly. Without another thought, he sprinted toward the source. At the end of the tunnel, Hero Rex slowly approached the frightened little girl. She stood frozen in place, unable to move. Tears filled her eyes as fear completely took over. Rex raised his sword. Without hesitation, he launched a deadly attack. Just before the blade reached its target, Kuji stepped in. The attack slammed directly into him instead. The impact sent a massive cloud of dust across the battlefield. Hidden behind Kuji's back, the little girl remained completely unharmed. As the dust settled, Kuji glanced over his shoulder and flashed the terrified child a confident smirk. Across from him, the entire hero party stood frozen in disbelief. None of them expected anyone to stop that attack. Kuji calmly turned back toward them. He questioned why an entire hero party was surrounding a single little girl. Rex's eyes narrowed. He demanded to know exactly what Kuji was. Then he ordered him to reveal his status. Without any hesitation, Kuji opened his status window. Just a passing villager. Rex refused to believe it. There was no way a mere villager could have survived that attack. One of the female heroes quickly shifted everyone's attention. Kuji's class could wait. The real issue stood right behind him. She pointed toward the little girl. Small horns were visible on top of her head. Her hood had been blown back during the clash, exposing what she really was. A demon. The little girl instinctively reached up and touched her horns, only now realizing they had been uncovered. Kuji stood silently beside her for a brief moment. Then he admitted the obvious. She was a demon. Another member of the hero party stared at him in disbelief. Even after knowing the truth, was he really planning to protect her anyway? The answer would change everything. Earlier, deep inside the ancient caverns, the hero party continued cutting through waves of blue devils. Palna, a level 78 magician, watched another monster fall and praised Rex for leading the charge. Rex, a level 90 hero, confidently accepted the praise. After all, he was the hero. Tina, a level 50 priest, looked around uneasily. There seemed to be far more monsters than usual. Palna shifted her attention to another member of the party. She checked to see if Oheim was keeping up. Kuru, a level 42 sage, struggled to catch her breath. Even so, she immediately asked everyone to stop calling her Oheim. Palna smiled and reminded her not to push herself too hard. Kuru quickly insisted she wasn't overdoing it. She had always dreamed of freeing humanity from the Demon King's oppression. Long ago, this world had been made up of more than 196 different countries. But after demons and monsters appeared, only 3 nations remained. Tina explained that human civilization had shrunk because safe land had become incredibly scarce. Kuru nodded. Under the Demon King's command, monsters had seized humanity's territory one piece at a time. That land had to be reclaimed. Only then could peace and prosperity return to the world. Palna couldn't help admiring Kururu's determination. She affectionately called her Oheim once again. Kururu immediately begged her to stop. She formally introduced herself as Kanazuki Kuru of Hekisaldoria. Palna laughed. The name was way too long. From now on, she would simply call her Kuru. Meanwhile, Tina loudly reminded everyone that her own name was simply Tina. Palna then noticed Rex examining the cave walls instead of listening. He continued feeling around the stone until something suddenly reacted. A hidden mechanism lit up. Rex smiled. The cavern extended much deeper than anyone expected. Palna looked beyond the newly revealed passage. Was the object that would aid their journey hidden further inside? She asked Rex what was waiting ahead. Rex confidently explained. According to the legends passed down through the royal family, a holy sword rested somewhere within these caverns. Only a hero who had reached level 90 or higher could wield it. Palna immediately wondered how Rex knew such a closely guarded secret. Rex proudly revealed the answer. Kuru was the princess of this country. For the sake of his daughter, the king had entrusted Rex with the legend. With victory almost within reach, Rex declared that their goal was finally close at hand. Meanwhile, the little girl Kuji had been searching for finally reached the end of the tunnel. She hurried toward a stone platform, then suddenly stopped. Something was missing. Her eyes widened. She searched the platform again. Nothing. It was gone. As she stared at the empty platform, a voice suddenly echoed through the cavern. Someone had found her. The little girl turned toward the sound. Standing before her was Hero Rex. Kururu instantly recognized the little girl's magical power. There was no doubt. She was a demon. The girl slowly stood up, glaring at the group. Rex froze for a split second. Then his eyes darted toward the platform. The holy sword was gone. Everything clicked at once. He immediately blamed the little girl and rushed to confront her. Fear filled her eyes as she desperately tried to explain herself, but Rex refused to listen. To him, this sacred place belonged to the royal family, and a demon had no right to be there. Without another thought, he drew his sword. Kururu tried to calm him down before things got worse. It was already too late. Rex charged straight at the frightened child. A burst of magic exploded from his blade as he unleashed a powerful attack. The little girl could only scream. But just before the blast reached her, Kuji stepped in. The attack slammed directly into him instead. A deafening explosion shook the cavern as smoke covered the entire area. When the dust began to settle, Rex demanded to know who Kuji really was. Kuji simply scratched the back of his head and casually claimed to be nothing more than an ordinary passing villager. Rex wasn't buying it. Someone capable of blocking that attack couldn't possibly be a mere villager. He immediately demanded to see Kuji's status. To everyone's disbelief, Kuji actually revealed it. His class really was villager. The little girl's eyes went wide. The entire hero party stood frozen in complete disbelief. Even Rex struggled to process what he was seeing. Kururu could barely contain her shock. More than Kuji's class, what stunned her was the fact that he had blocked Rex's attack without suffering a single scratch. Then her eyes shifted toward the little girl's horns. There was still no question. She was a demon. And despite knowing that, Kuji had willingly protected her. The little girl shrank back in fear as Kururu demanded to know what Kuji was really trying to do. Kuji quietly closed his eyes, desperately searching for an excuse. A moment later, he placed a hand on the little girl's shoulder. She froze. Then he boldly claimed that she wasn't a demon at all. She was his little sister. Palna and Tina stared at him in complete disbelief. The girl's horns made that impossible to believe. Kuji immediately tried to explain them away. He awkwardly insisted they were handmade accessories that attached directly to the head. The explanation only made Palna and Tina stare at him with even greater horror. Kuji immediately doubled down on his story. To prove he was serious, he pulled a blue devil's horn from inside his coat and held it up. Palna recognized it instantly. A blue devil's horn could certainly explain the strange magical energy. But before she could finish her thought, Kuji demonstrated it himself. He forcefully jammed the horn straight into the massive stone pedestal. The entire hero party froze. Their jaws dropped. Rex could hardly believe what he had just witnessed. That pedestal was the legendary throne that had sealed the holy sword for generations. It wasn't some cheap piece of stone that could be damaged through raw strength alone. Meanwhile, Kuji casually sat on top of the pedestal with a smug grin. As if nothing unusual had happened. He brushed the dust off his hands and acted like the whole thing was perfectly normal. To him, it wasn't difficult at all. For some reason, that completely caught Kuru off guard. A small smile escaped her face. The ridiculous excuse was somehow kind of funny. She even let out a quiet laugh. Rex turned toward her in confusion. Instead of questioning Kuji any further, Kuru decided to let the matter drop. If he was willing to go this far to explain it, then that would be the official story. Inside his head, Kuji celebrated. His deception had actually worked. Kuru smiled and assured him they wouldn't pursue the matter any further. But Rex wasn't finished. He immediately pointed toward Kuji and the little girl. The holy sword was an entirely different issue. He demanded to know why Kuji's so-called little sister had been inside the sacred chamber in the first place. Then he looked at the empty pedestal. The holy sword had vanished. The little girl had appeared at the exact same time. There was no way that was just a coincidence. Kuji calmly insisted that it really was. Then he asked the question that stunned everyone. What was the big deal about the holy sword anyway? Rex proudly declared himself to be the hero. A chosen human. The one and only person worthy of wielding the holy sword. Kuji simply stared at him. Then his expression suddenly changed. It looked like he had finally remembered something. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head. Rex was talking about that sword? Then this was actually his fault. He had found it earlier. And already sold it. The entire hero party froze. Then all of them shouted in complete disbelief. Rex couldn't believe what he had just heard. The royal family's legendary holy sword. Sold? Kuji looked genuinely confused by the title. Rex immediately called it impossible. The ancient magic sealed within the weapon allowed only the hero to wield it. There was no chance that an ordinary villager could have even picked it up. Kuji casually agreed. The sword had been pretty heavy, but he explained that he never picked up the sword itself. He picked up the giant stone throne instead. Before anyone could react, Kuji walked back to the enormous pedestal. He announced that he would demonstrate. Someone in the hero party muttered that it couldn't be possible. Kuji effortlessly lifted the entire stone pedestal over his head. As if it weighed almost nothing. He casually showed everyone that it was absolutely possible. Kuru was shocked and asked what his level is. He casually said that he is level 999. Then he gently placed it back exactly where it had been. Rex stood there in complete horror. His eyes locked onto Kuji's status. This made no sense. The very foundation of the world's leveling system said it was impossible. The only way to raise a level was by defeating monsters stronger than yourself. And as far as Rex knew, no villager had ever reached a level higher than 30. Yet somehow, Kuji stood before him, shattering everything he thought he knew. Rex couldn't accept what he was seeing. There was no reason for a villager to throw their life away on the battlefield just to raise a level. Their class wasn't built for combat. No sane person would risk everything trying to surpass those limits. Then Rex proudly brought up history itself. The highest level ever recorded belonged to a legendary hero. Level 253. That was supposed to be the absolute peak. So how? How had an ordinary villager gone even beyond that? He demanded an answer. Kuji barely reacted. He simply guessed it was because he had fought monsters every single day. That answer only made Rex angrier. He shouted that he had done the same. He had fought countless monsters. If anyone had the numbers, it was him. He had trained relentlessly. But Kuji cut him off. The only thing they had in common was defeating monsters. For the first time, Kuji's expression hardened. Then he finally snapped. He told Rex to stop talking. None of it mattered anyway. That was simply how life worked. The sooner he accepted it, the better. Without another word, Kuji grabbed Alice's hand and started walking away. Rex immediately stopped him. If Kuji possessed power like that, then why wasn't he using it to defeat the Demon King? Surely that had to be his goal. Kuji looked back with complete indifference. He explained that he was just trying to live an ordinary life and make a living. As for defeating the Demon King, that was a job for heroes. Rex stood there in disbelief. That was his reason? Kuji calmly replied that Rex still didn't seem to understand how the world really worked. Confused, Rex demanded to know what he meant. Kuji slowly turned back. His eyes were filled with an overwhelming sadness. Even Rex was caught off guard. As Kuji prepared to leave, Kuru suddenly called out to him. The mention of the holy sword made Kuji visibly flinch. She reminded him that the weapon belonged to the royal family. Before she could continue, Kuji immediately apologized. He sincerely begged her to overlook what had happened. Meanwhile, Alice quietly wondered why the holy sword had been hidden inside a dungeon in the first place. Ignoring the question, Kuru made Kuji an offer. She invited him to join the hero party and help defeat the Demon King. The moment those words left her mouth, Alice shot Kururu a cold, threatening glare. Kuji pointed to himself in surprise. Then he politely declined. Kururu couldn't understand why. With power like his, he could achieve feats no one else in history had ever accomplished. Kuji's expression instantly turned cold. His answer was simple. A chilling silence swept through the cavern. Even the air itself seemed to freeze as the hero party stood speechless. Kuji turned away once more. He asked if all they needed was for the holy sword to be returned. If that was the case, he would help them search for it. So they should simply let the matter go. But Kururu still wasn't ready to give up. Kururu refused to let Kuji leave. She demanded to know if he truly had no desire for fame or fortune. What about the countless people suffering across the world? Didn't he want to save them? Kuji looked back without hesitation. Wealth sounded nice. Fame meant nothing to him. And if people were suffering, of course he would help them. Kururu immediately seized on his answer. Then that alone should be enough reason to fight. She went even further. When the Demon King was finally defeated, she declared that she would become the hero's wife. Rex immediately protested. That announcement shocked him just as much as it shocked Kuji. For a brief moment, Kuji simply smiled. To him, it showed that Kururu cared more about helping others than about her own happiness. Even so, his answer didn't change. He still refused. Kururu desperately begged him to explain why. Kuji calmly revealed that he simply didn't believe defeating the Demon King was such an incredible achievement. That was why he had no intention of fighting alongside them. It was just how he felt. So they shouldn't worry about it too much. Beside him, Alice quietly smiled while holding his hand. Kuji then admitted that the hero party wasn't necessarily wrong either. That answer only left everyone even more confused. Palna asked him to explain what he meant. Kuji shook his head. There was no point unless they figured it out themselves. It would be better if they simply forgot he had said anything. Tina pleaded for at least a hint. Kuji finally gave them one. He reminded them of what Kururu herself had said earlier. There were people suffering. Then he asked a single question. Did they really think he was that selfish? Without another word, Kuji and Alice walked away. Kururu stood there completely bewildered. Before long, the two of them disappeared from sight. Rex slowly lowered his head. Kuji's words echoed through his mind. He still didn't understand how this world really worked. Then determination filled his eyes once again. He had to become stronger. Stronger than that mysterious villager. Meanwhile, Kuji and Alice finally emerged from the cave. Kuji let out a tired sigh as he noticed night had already fallen. A sudden sneeze interrupted him. The air had become much colder. He suggested they head home. But when he looked over, Alice was quietly staring at him. Confused, Kuji asked what was wrong. Alice hesitated. She struggled to find the words. Then she finally gathered all of her courage. She revealed that Kuji was the very person she had been searching for. Kuji pointed at himself in confusion. Alice nervously tried to continue. After stumbling over her words, she finally blurted it out. She asked Kuji to marry her. Kuji instinctively took a step back. His mind went completely blank. A marriage proposal had come out of nowhere. And he still had no idea who this mysterious girl really was. Back when Kuji was a child, he was always chasing monsters instead of doing village work. His father constantly called him back, furious that he kept risking his life. To him, Kuji was nothing more than a villager, and villagers belonged in the fields, not on the battlefield. Beside him, Kuji's mother could only watch with quiet concern. None of it stopped him. Confident in his aim, Kuji believed throwing rocks from a safe distance was enough to keep him alive. He had even reached level 3, proudly treating it as proof that he was getting stronger. His father couldn't understand it. A villager wasn't supposed to gain levels at all. But Kuji was already sprinting away. The chance to hunt monsters was simply too tempting. Compared to the tiny wages of ordinary village work, monster hunting paid far more, and that was all the motivation he needed. In this world, every class had its place. Tailors sewed clothes. Farmers worked the land. Bakers made bread. Laborers handled heavy work. Villagers lived simple lives. None of them were meant to fight monsters. Even so, Kuji had started hunting them while he was still a kid. It all began with a lucky accident that let him defeat one, though he never realized just how unusual that was. Before long, he was knocking down slimes with nothing but well-thrown rocks. Every defeated monster dropped money. The rewards completely overshadowed anything a normal villager could ever earn, and the endless stream of profit pulled Kuji in deeper with every hunt. But along with that excitement came a strange question. Why did monsters drop money in the first place? That mystery lingered in the back of his mind. Back in the present, outside the cave, Alice finally found the person she had been searching for. Without any warning, she immediately declared that she wanted to marry Kuji. The unexpected proposal left him completely stunned. Brushing it aside, Kuji quickly shifted the conversation to something that made far less sense to him. Why would a demon need the holy sword? Alice hesitated. The answer was her father. That single word instantly brought back a painful memory. Kuji remembered his own father lying lifeless in a pool of blood, and the memory hit him hard enough to make him cover his face. Alice quietly revealed that her father had fallen seriously ill. At the same time, rumors were spreading about a new hero beginning a journey. If that hero obtained the holy sword, she feared her father would be killed. Kuji wondered if the holy sword really had the power to defeat her father, just like it was meant to defeat the Demon King. Alice reluctantly admitted the truth. Her father wasn't merely like the Demon King. He was the Demon King. The shocking revelation left Kuji more confused than ever, while an even bigger mystery began to unfold. Alice finally revealed the truth. Her father was the Demon King. The confession left Kuji frozen in disbelief. Alice quickly apologized, afraid she had been hiding her identity. But Kuji barely reacted to that part. Instead, he was more surprised that the old Demon King actually had a daughter. Alice couldn't believe what she was hearing. If Kuji already knew her father, was that the reason he never tried to defeat him? Not exactly. To Kuji, the Demon King's defeat was only a matter of time. Hearing that, Alice desperately pleaded for his help. She wondered if humans hated demons simply because monsters were born from demon horns. Kuji admitted he knew all about the demon horns. But that alone wasn't enough to judge someone. Just because a person was born a demon didn't mean everything was automatically their fault. As far as he could see, Alice herself was no different from any ordinary human. That was exactly why Alice dreamed of something impossible. She wanted humans and demons to live together in peace. If coexistence could become reality, then everything could change. At that moment, Kuji finally understood why she had suddenly proposed marriage. It was never about romance. It was her desperate attempt to bridge the gap between two races. Even so, Kuji crushed that hope without hesitation. He believed it was impossible. Even if demons never harmed anyone again, monsters would still attack humans. Humans would continue to hate demons because of it. And after enduring endless hatred, demons would only grow to hate humans in return. It was a cycle with no end. Alice tried to argue back, but Kuji stopped her. Plenty of people already knew demons weren't truly different from humans. That had never been the real problem. The truth left Alice speechless. After a long silence, Kuji quietly accepted reality for what it was. This was simply the twisted structure of the world they lived in. The look in his eyes sent a chill through Alice. She couldn't understand how he knew so much. Then another question escaped her. If he understood all of this, why didn't he want to kill demons? Kuji paused for a moment. Then he turned his back once again. The only answer he could give was that he was a fool. Alice watched him walk away, unable to understand why someone like him would call himself that. The more she learned about Kuji, the more mysterious he became. Unable to give up, she ran after him. Soon, they arrived outside the walls of Valmen. Kuji let out a tired sigh, relieved that he had finally made it. Then he glanced behind him. Alice was still following. Trying to hide behind a nearby tree, she nervously admitted that this was the only town where she could buy the medicine her father needed. Kuji immediately realized why she had come. Then another question crossed his mind. Did she even have the money to pay for it? Alice bit her lip. Tears slowly welled up in her eyes, revealing an answer she didn't even have to say. Kuji could only awkwardly accept the obvious. Alice had no money. After a brief silence, he asked her something that had been bothering him from the very beginning. Why didn't she hate humans? Alice looked at him with complete innocence. To her, hatred would never change anything. If both sides continued hating each other forever, nothing in the world would ever improve. Then she added something that completely caught Kuji off guard. Humans and demons were equals. The simple statement left him stunned. He stared at the young demons standing before him. Equals. He had never heard a demon describe humans that way. For a moment he could only stand there. Then he suddenly burst into laughter. After wiping the tears from his eyes, he couldn't help thinking that Alice was quite an unusual little demon. Alice smiled back without hesitation. To her, Kuji was an unusual human as well. She remembered her father's belief that the future he dreamed of had to exist somewhere. Those words immediately silenced Kuji. Even so, he believed people like him were still a tiny minority. Alice refused to be discouraged. No matter how impossible it seemed, she had no intention of giving up. Watching her determination, Kuji quietly realized something. A young demon had traveled all this way alone. Sending her back by herself would be far too dangerous. After thinking it over, he finally gave in. He had plenty of time to spare anyway. Alice looked at him in confusion as he motioned for her to come closer. The moment she stepped forward, Kuji grabbed her by the hair. Alice immediately panicked, unable to understand what he was doing. Then Kuji casually revealed his plan. He was going to buy the medicine for her. The unexpected offer completely shocked Alice. But Kuji wasn't finished. She would be coming into town with him. That idea terrified her. She instinctively reached for her horns, convinced her demonic aura would expose her the moment they entered the city. The instant her hands touched them, she froze. Something was different. Kuji calmly questioned what demonic aura she was talking about. Alice rushed toward him in complete panic, desperately trying to understand what had happened. Kuji simply opened his arms, ready to catch her if she tripped over herself. Then he explained. He had only covered her horns. Long ago, while searching for monsters, he stumbled across an incredibly rare object. Spawn blocks constantly created endless waves of monsters, making them a nightmare to deal with. By pure chance, he managed to destroy one. Instead of ordinary loot, it dropped an incredibly mysterious S-rank material. That miraculous material had the power to alter a demon's natural constitution. Using it, Kuji crafted an unbelievably rare item. A simple piece of cloth. Alice's eyes sparkled with excitement. If something like this existed, could he make one for every demon? Kuji immediately shut down that idea. He had already explained that it required an unbelievably rare miracle material. There was no way to make them that easily. With a smug grin, Kuji turned his back on Alice. As long as she kept the cloth on her horns, she would be perfectly safe. All she had to do was pull up her hood. Alice quickly did exactly that. Still curious, she asked why he had ever thought of making an item like this in the first place. It even seemed perfectly designed for demon horns. Kuji scratched the back of his head. He casually admitted that the two of them were actually similar in that regard. Alice immediately wondered if he meant himself. Before the conversation could go any further, Kuji quickly brushed the question aside. Alice could barely contain her excitement. To her, the item was nothing short of amazing. Kuji changed the subject instead. He realized she had never told him her name. She introduced herself as Alice Balnesio. In return, he finally gave his own name. Kagami Kuji. After the introductions, Kuji suddenly realized just how hungry he was. It was time to head into town. Alice happily agreed. For the first time, it truly felt like the two of them might become friends. Inside the bustling town of Valman, Alice nervously clutched her hood. Everywhere she looked, humans filled the streets. Her heart raced. If anyone discovered she was a demon, everything would be over. Before fear could completely consume her, Kuji handed her something to try. Moments later, the two sat together, quietly watching the crowds pass by. Alice took a bite of the ice cream. Her face instantly lit up. It was delicious. Watching her reaction, Kuji smiled. Normally, dessert came after a proper meal. But today was a special occasion. Then something unexpected happened. A nearby man noticed how much Alice was enjoying herself and happily offered her another snack. Before she could even react, someone else handed her a fresh apple. Another person offered her a slice of pizza. Then another placed a burger into her hands. One after another, complete strangers welcomed her with warm smiles. Alice covered her mouth, overwhelmed by kindness she never expected. Nearby, Kuji could only smile to himself. As they walked away, Alice carried a bag overflowing with food. Kuji quietly held his side, almost laughing in relief. Once Alice experienced humans for herself, she would finally understand that they weren't all driven by hatred. Looking up at the sky, Kuji silently promised his late father that he would make him proud. But far above the peaceful city, a flock of enormous bird monsters circled through the clouds. Standing atop one of them was a mysterious man, silently looking down at Valman. His cold gaze settled on the unsuspecting town below. At that very moment, Alice had finally found hope. And the force that would soon shatter that hope was already descending from the sky. While Kagami and Alice wandered through the city, Kagami decided their first priority was finding an inn for the night. The idea alone left Alice stunned. After everything they had been through, sleeping in a real bed almost felt like an impossible luxury. The moment they checked in, Alice threw herself onto the bed without hesitation. Relief completely took over as she enjoyed the simple comfort she had been missing for so long. Kagami, however, couldn't afford to relax. Before returning home, he still needed to buy medicine. On top of that, he planned to recruit an old friend to travel with them. That caught Alice off guard. She had assumed the journey would only be the two of them. Kagami knew he could handle any fight on his own. But protecting someone else while battling was a completely different story. Adventurers could attack at any moment, and having another reliable ally would greatly improve their chances. After reassuring her, Kagami left the inn, promising to return soon. Left alone, Alice quietly reflected on everything that had happened. She had almost forgotten that humans and demons were supposed to be enemies. Recent events had made her lower her guard. Still, if this companion was someone Kagami trusted, then everything would probably be fine. Not long afterward, a knock echoed through the room. Alice froze for a moment before realizing someone had arrived much sooner than expected. She hurried to the door and opened it without another thought. The instant the door swung open, an enormous, muscular man filled the entire entrance. His towering frame was so overwhelming that Alice stumbled backward onto the floor in pure shock. The giant looked down at the terrified girl with an unexpectedly gentle expression. A moment later, Kagami introduced the newcomer as Takako Builder. Takako casually described himself as a fighter, even though his massive physique made that fact painfully obvious. Noticing Alice's frightened face, Kagami quickly reassured her. Takako already knew she was a demon, and unlike most people, he had absolutely no problem with it. Alice could hardly believe it. Takako warmly welcomed her without the slightest hint of hostility. Long ago, when he had been on the verge of death from severe injuries, a compassionate demon had given him medicine that saved his life. That single act completely changed his outlook. From that day forward, he realized humans and demons were far more alike than anyone wanted to admit. All the hatred and endless fighting suddenly seemed meaningless. After leaving that life behind, he settled down to run a modest club and bar instead. Hearing the story brought tears to Alice's eyes. Embarrassed by her first reaction, she apologized for being so afraid of him and introduced herself properly. Takako happily accepted her greeting, giving an enthusiastic thumbs up as he welcomed her with open arms. Watching the two immediately get along, Kagami remembered the day he first walked into Takako's bar as an ordinary customer. Ever since that meeting, the two had shared an unusually strong bond, and now, that friendship was about to become the foundation of their next journey. Alice watched Kagami and Takako casually roughhouse with each other, amazed by how naturally they got along. Then, in a single blow, Takako drove a punch straight into Kagami's stomach. Alice gasped in disbelief. Another level 999. With a cheerful clap, Takako let the completely limp Kagami collapse onto the floor before turning back to Alice with a bright smile. Learning that Alice had been sleeping outdoors this whole time, Takako immediately suggested taking her to the hot springs. Alice's eyes lit up with excitement. The offer was impossible to refuse. She even invited Kagami to come along. Still lying flat on the floor, Kagami immediately turned it down. Instead, he handed Alice the ribbon and reminded her to use it to hide her horns before sending the two of them off to enjoy themselves. Alice blinked in confusion. Girls? As the pair left the inn, Takako laughed, mentioning that Kagami absolutely hated taking baths. For a woman like herself, that habit was almost unbelievable. Alice quietly walked beside her, completely stunned. A woman? The revelation left her speechless. Back at the inn, Kagami watched the two disappear into the distance before laughing to himself. Just as he thought. Alice had believed Takako was a man the entire time. The smile on Kagami's face slowly faded as Alice's earlier confession about her father resurfaced in his mind. Without warning, an old memory came rushing back. Inside a moving carriage, his father calmly explained that villagers didn't need to become fighters. The proper path for Kuji was to work hard, do his job, and grow into an excellent tailor. But even as a child, Kuji couldn't accept that answer. He already understood the harsh reality of the world. Weak monsters like slimes or moss goblins could be defeated by throwing rocks from a safe distance. Anything level 4 or above was completely different. Against monsters that strong, ordinary villagers stood no chance. Back then, a powerful warrior had rescued him. Instead of praise, the warrior only looked down on him, treating villagers as the weakest people alive. That moment filled young Kuji with frustration. Looking toward the sky, he silently questioned why fate never allowed people to choose the lives they truly wanted. Then everything changed. The carriage suddenly came to a violent stop. Confused, Kuji called out to his father. His father appeared at the carriage entrance. But behind him, a monster had already opened its massive jaws. His father's expression hardened as he gave Kuji one final command. Young Kuji cried out in horror. The memory shattered. Kagami snapped back to reality, breathing heavily as sweat covered his face. He desperately forced himself to move on, repeating that it was all in the past. Then his eyes drifted toward the window. Something outside immediately caught his attention. Meanwhile, Takako and Alice continued making their way through the bustling town, completely unaware that a new turn of events was already beginning. As they walked through town, Takako noticed Alice had suddenly gone quiet. Her face had turned pale. Unable to hold back her worries any longer, Alice finally asked how Kagami had reached level 999. As far as she knew, no monster in the world was stronger than level 500. If another human ever reached Kagami's level, that person could become a threat to her father. Takako immediately reassured her. There was no need to fear. According to her, Kagami was the only human who had ever reached level 999. Alice couldn't understand how anyone could be so certain. Takako's expression softened as she revealed the reason. Kagami had lost something incredibly precious. Something every living being was supposed to have. To Takako, that was exactly what made Kagami the biggest fool in the world. Alice fell silent. What could that possibly mean? Questions flooded her mind one after another. Who was Kagami really? What was he thinking? How had he become so unbelievably strong? The more she learned, the more she wanted to know. Unable to contain her curiosity, Alice pleaded with Takako to tell her everything about him. Takako simply smiled. Some answers couldn't be handed over so easily. They had only just met, and true understanding came from spending time together. She believed getting to know each other naturally would be far more meaningful. Alice accepted her answer with a small nod. Determined, she thanked Takako and promised to learn more about both of them little by little. Takako could barely contain herself. Alice was simply too adorable. Overcome with affection, she scooped Alice into her arms and happily carried her toward the hot springs. A loud shout echoed through the streets. Everyone instinctively looked up. Panic spread across the town. Alice stared into the sky in disbelief. Monsters. They were falling from the heavens. Above the city, a demon rode atop a massive bird-like monster, laughing as chaos erupted below. Back at the inn, Kagami looked out the window and immediately recognized the creatures. A flock of hell crows. Takako instantly stepped in front of Alice, shielding her. Alice couldn't believe what she was seeing. The Demon King's army had arrived. From high above, a declaration rang across the city as the invading force announced the beginning of their assault, promising that humanity would kneel before the might of the demons forever. The townspeople erupted in anger. Instead of fleeing, the adventurers prepared to fight back. Alice stood frozen. None of this made sense. Her father would never have wanted something like this. Tears filled her eyes as demons began attacking the city around them. Seeing her break down, Takako calmly reassured her. This was Valman, a city filled with adventurers. These people wouldn't fall so easily. Before Alice could respond, another shout came from nearby. Everyone looked skyward again. This time, something even stranger was happening. Monsters were launching into the sky. Alice and Takako watched in astonishment. Takako immediately understood what it meant. There was only one person capable of pulling off something like that. Kagami. Without wasting another second, Takako lifted Alice into her arms and sprinted toward the source. If they could find where those monsters were being launched from, they would find Kagami waiting there. Kagami grabbed another monster with both hands. With a single motion, he hurled it high into the sky. The creature shot upward like a cannonball, forcing the demon commander to shield himself as it nearly slammed into him. Hovering above the battlefield, the commander stared down in disbelief. The monsters? They were being launched through the air with incredible accuracy. Someone was deliberately using them as projectiles. For a brief moment, he wondered if a hero had appeared. But even a hero shouldn't have been capable of something this absurd. From the streets below, Kagami spotted the commander floating overhead. So that was the leader. He wanted to bring him down, but first he needed to regroup with Alice and Takako. Just as he moved through the city, Kagami suddenly ducked behind a wall. There he was again. The hero. Rex charged forward and prepared to unleash one of his strongest techniques. The instant Kagami realized what was about to happen, his expression changed. There was no way this fool was seriously planning to use that attack here. Before Rex could swing his glowing sword, Kagami tackled him to the ground and stopped the attack cold. The nearby adventurers stared in shock. Not only had the mysterious man appeared again, but he was casually tossing giant monsters through the sky as if they weighed nothing. Ignoring everyone's disbelief, Kagami grabbed another monster and launched it upward without missing a beat. Rex exploded with frustration, unable to understand what Kagami was trying to accomplish. Kururu was just as upset. The adventurers had finally organized a full counterattack, only for Kagami to interrupt everything. Kagami looked over the battlefield. The archers, crossbow units, and mages had all been positioned for a coordinated assault. The plan itself wasn't terrible, but it was still far too naive. Without hesitation, Kagami smacked Kururu on the head before pointing out the flaws. Rex's powerful technique deserved praise. But trying to kill the demon commander immediately was a mistake. Capturing him first could have provided valuable information. The ranged units had another serious problem. If their arrows missed, they would rain back down onto the town itself, causing even more destruction than the demons. Everyone had overlooked the people they were supposed to protect. Even so, Kagami admitted their intentions had been good. Kururu lowered her head in frustration. He was right. She had become so focused on defeating the enemy that she completely forgot about the city below. Instead of protecting its people, her plan would have placed them in even greater danger. Palna looked at Kagami with growing curiosity. If magic wasn't involved, then how was he throwing enormous monsters into the sky with such impossible strength? Kagami smirked, ready to explain. Before he could say a word, another voice interrupted him. Alice suddenly rushed around the corner. One sentence immediately caught everyone's attention. Kagami couldn't use magic? Takako appeared right behind her, letting out a relieved sigh after finally catching up with him. Seeing them both unharmed, Kagami relaxed. At least they were safe. Watching the exchange, Palna's eyes narrowed. Something about their relationship didn't add up. If Alice were really Kagami's little sister, she wouldn't be calling him by his family name. Kagami didn't bother answering the suspicion. He simply brushed the comment aside, leaving everyone with even more questions than before. Ignoring everyone's doubts, Kagami turned to Alice first. The only thing that mattered to him was whether she had been hurt. Seeing the tears in her eyes, he immediately tried to lighten the mood, reassuring her that everything would be fine. He would handle it. Kuru stepped forward and formally introduced herself as Kanazuki Kuru Hekisaldoria. She admitted that Kagami's incredible strength had caught everyone's attention. But if humanity truly wanted to display its full power, then they needed to work together. Kagami didn't think it was necessary. As far as he was concerned, all they had to do was capture the demon commander flying overhead. Kuru was left speechless. Kagami pointed out that the Demon King's army had no idea how strong the humans actually were. If they captured their commander now, the invading force would be thrown into complete confusion, no matter how organized the attack seemed. The group fell silent. Palna finally spoke up. Capturing ordinary demons was one thing. The commander in the sky was a completely different challenge. Kagami simply raised his hands, telling everyone to relax. When facing an enemy, there was only one thing to do. Defeat them. Then he added something that left everyone confused. When dealing with an opponent whose true intentions were unknown, the smartest move was to question everything that seemed suspicious. Rex and Tina exchanged puzzled looks. They had no idea what he meant. Palna, however, caught onto something else. Tensions. It sounded like Kagami knew far more about this attack than he was willing to reveal. Kagami turned away before anyone could question him further. In his mind, he realized Palna was beginning to connect the dots. Until now, the Demon King's army had never launched an attack like this. For them to invade while the Demon King himself was absent. The timing was simply too unnatural. He glanced toward Alice and let out a quiet sigh. If only he could fly up there and ask the commander directly. Instead, he'd have to do it the hard way. Stretching his arms, Kagami casually told everyone to step back. Alice watched him with concern, wondering what he was about to do. A confident grin spread across his face. Then he leaped. Everyone looked up in disbelief as Kagami rocketed into the sky. Midair, he called out to Takako. Takako immediately understood. They were using that move again. Without hesitation, she launched herself after him. Kagami prepared himself for one final boost. Takako warned that this special express delivery came with absolutely no guarantee of passenger safety. Then she spun through the air and drove a devastating kick straight into Kagami. The impact blasted him forward like a living missile. The infamous Takako bazooka. High above the city, the demon commander froze. First, monsters had started flying. Humans were flying too. What kind of town was this? Kagami came screaming toward him at terrifying speed. He shot right past. The commander stared in disbelief as the human completely overshot his target. This place was becoming more disturbing by the second. Was this really a human city? A massive crash erupted behind him. The monster beneath the commander's feet flinched as the impact shook the air. He quickly turned around. Kagami was already back on his feet. Complaining that Takako had almost killed him with that launch, Kagami grumbled that the giant gorilla really needed to work on her aim next time. Despite the rough landing, he quickly brushed himself off. No more games. It was time to get straight to the point. Standing face to face with the demon commander, Kagami calmly demanded an explanation for the sudden invasion, setting the stage for the answers he had been searching for. The demon commander could only stare in disbelief, unable to understand what kind of monster stood before him. Kagami looked completely unfazed. Nothing more than a passing villager. That answer only made things worse. A mere villager with level 999 was beyond impossible. Someone with that kind of power could even threaten the Demon King himself. Without another second to think, the demon commander launched a full-force attack, determined to stop Kagami before he could ever reach his lord. A massive cloud of smoke exploded across the battlefield. The commander waited nervously as the dust slowly cleared. Then Kagami casually stepped out without a scratch. He brushed the attack aside and calmly revealed that there was no reason to panic. The Demon King was actually someone he already knew. He had no intention of killing him. The demon commander froze. His strongest attack had accomplished absolutely nothing. And now this mysterious villager was claiming to be acquainted with the Demon King himself. The story sounded completely absurd. Then Kagami dropped another shocking revelation. Alice was the Demon King's daughter, and she was currently under his protection. The commander's eyes widened. Very few even knew Lady Alice existed. If this stranger truly knew about her, then ignoring him was no longer an option. The commander desperately tried to figure out where Kagami stood. Was he an ally of demonkind? The answer was anything but simple. Kagami made it clear that he wasn't an enemy, but he wasn't an ally either. At the same time, he couldn't exactly call himself a supporter of humanity. That only made him even more mysterious. The commander demanded to know why Kagami had come. Kagami's smile turned serious. Something about this entire attack didn't make sense. The Demon King he knew was never the type to seek humanity's complete destruction. Earlier, Alice had explained that her father had fallen ill and that she had traveled this far searching for medicine. That raised one important question. Had the order to attack this town truly come from the Demon King himself? The commander immediately rejected the idea. The Demon King was sick? That couldn't be true. As far as he knew, these orders had come directly from his lord. Kagami didn't back down. Was he absolutely certain? Had the Demon King personally given those orders? If not, then there was a much bigger problem hiding beneath the surface. For the first time, doubt crept into the commander's mind. He replayed everything that had happened inside the throne room. Nothing had seemed unusual. The Demon King had been sitting on his throne, while his trusted right-hand demon, Esteller Urgot, stood beside him. Then the realization hit. It wasn't the Demon King who had spoken. It had been Esteller. He had declared it a royal command and ordered the assault on Valmon. The commander's confidence instantly collapsed. Had those orders never come from the Demon King after all? Kagami laughed, telling him not to jump to conclusions yet. There still wasn't enough information to know the truth. Maybe Esteller had acted on his own from the very beginning. Or maybe someone else was manipulating him. The possibility stunned the commander. The thought that even the mighty Demon King could be manipulated seemed unimaginable. Kagami quickly reminded him that it was only one possibility. Panicking now wouldn't help anyone. Realizing every second mattered, the commander immediately decided they had to rush back to the Demon King's castle. But before the Hellcrow could move, Kagami casually grabbed its head and brought it to a complete stop. The commander was stunned. He thought Kagami was about to send them crashing straight into the forest below. Instead, Kagami simply smiled. Everything was going exactly as planned. Looking up into the sky, he calmly noted that the remaining Hellcrows had finally arrived. The situation was about to take another unexpected turn. The demon commander couldn't understand what Kagami was planning. His eyes widened as Kagami suddenly leaped off the Hellcrow. An instant later, the answer became painfully clear. Kagami shot through the sky like a missile, cutting down every flying Hellcrow in his path. One after another, they dropped from the air. The demon commander could only watch in complete disbelief. An entire flock had been wiped out in a single attack. Moments later, Kagami returned as gold coins poured from the sky like rain. He casually waved, almost as if nothing extraordinary had happened, while the commander could only wonder what in the world was going through his head. The Demon King could be in grave danger, yet Kagami was busy collecting rewards. The commander became convinced that Kagami had to be plotting something. Kagami simply raised both hands, telling him to settle down before things became even worse. Then he explained his reasoning. If someone really was manipulating the situation, rushing straight to the Demon King's castle would only expose both the commander and the Demon King to even greater danger. It would be far safer to eliminate the invading army first, then return to the castle in secret. The commander stopped to think. The plan actually made sense. Then Kagami casually admitted there was another reason. He also wanted to keep every last coin earned from defeating the Hellcrows. The commander immediately lost his patience. The overloaded Hellcrow couldn't possibly carry that much weight. At this rate, they would both crash. Kagami only smirked. That had been the plan all along. Without hesitation, he slammed his foot into the Hellcrow's back. The giant beast died instantly. Both of them began plummeting toward the ground. The commander completely panicked. There was no way anyone could survive a fall like this. Kagami, meanwhile, leaned back as if enjoying the ride. He wasn't worried about himself. The commander, however, would probably feel it. A moment later, they crashed. The commander slammed into the ground and barely managed to stay conscious. Everything hurt. When he finally opened his eyes, Kagami was already standing over him with a smile, relieved to see that he had survived. The commander stared in disbelief. Even after that fall, Kagami was perfectly fine. The only word that came to mind was monster. Kagami brushed the comment aside and casually asked for his name. The commander finally introduced himself as Mino Abrasher. Still confused, Mino asked the question that had been bothering him from the start. Was Kagami truly not planning to kill a demon? Kagami frowned. To him, that question was ridiculous. If there was absolutely no other choice, then he would fight. But Mino seemed like a reasonable person. More importantly, he genuinely cared about both the Demon King and Alice. That alone made it hard to believe he was truly a bad person. Mino finally realized something. Kagami really wasn't siding with humanity. Kagami looked frustrated by the entire situation. Everything had become so pointless. If monsters didn't exist, humans and demons might have been able to live together peacefully. Instead, monsters were naturally born from the horns of demons. Humans feared those monsters and hunted demons without mercy. Demons responded by fearing humans in return. The endless cycle of hatred continued simply because both sides were afraid of each other. Kagami asked Mino if he didn't think that was incredibly sad. Mino had no answer. With the battlefield finally cleared, Kagami cheerfully announced that he would be heading home. He hoisted the massive sack of loot onto his shoulder before revealing his next plan. Tomorrow afternoon he would return with Alice. And Mino would be coming with him. Mino couldn't understand why any human would willingly take such a dangerous risk. Before he could finish the thought, Kagami suddenly leaned right into his face. For a split second, Mino froze. Kagami teased him, wondering if he was actually worried about him. Mino immediately denied it. He simply couldn't understand why someone would go this far. Kagami laughed, acting as though he had expected that answer all along. Either way, he wanted to see the Demon King's condition for himself. After a brief pause, Mino finally accepted the idea. As long as Lady Alice remained safe, he would allow Kagami to accompany him. Kagami's face lit up with a bright smile. He declared that Mino really was a good guy. Alice would definitely be thrilled. With that promise made, Kagami cheerfully headed off, leaving Mino wondering just what kind of human he had met, and what would happen when they reached the Demon King's castle. Mino lay on the ground, still trying to process everything that had happened. A level 999 villager. The very idea was beyond reason. For now, he couldn't even move, but at least he had survived. Kagami's words continued to echo in his mind. Understanding humans. Living alongside them. The war between humans and demons existed because everyone believed that was impossible. That foolish human had dared to believe otherwise. For now, Mino decided he would simply keep watching him. If coexistence was truly possible, could peace actually become reality? The thought lingered for only a moment. Mino let out a deep sigh. That was nothing more than a fantasy. Right now, all he could do was pray that Lady Alice was safe. The next morning, the atmosphere at the Valman Inn was much calmer. Kagami sat down for breakfast beside Alice, letting out a sleepy yawn. He quickly noticed the smile on her face. Alice was happy that Kagami had taken the time to genuinely talk things through with Mino. Kagami admitted that, despite everything, Mino seemed like a pretty reasonable guy. Alice couldn't agree more. Knowing that Mino had been the one leading yesterday's attack actually made her feel relieved. She hoped they could meet again under better circumstances. Kagami reminded her that the hero's party was still staying in town. Since Alice was pretending to be an ordinary human, meeting Mino here could become a disaster in an instant. Still, building trust between humans and demons was something they couldn't ignore forever. Then another question crossed Kagami's mind. Where was Takako? Alice explained that she had gone to check on her shop. Kagami chuckled. That sounded exactly like Takako. With breakfast nearly finished, they turned their attention to the journey ahead. Getting back to the Demon King's castle wouldn't be easy. The roads were filled with humans, while Mino practically radiated demonic energy. Using horses was out of the question. Animals refused to work with demons. Alice sighed. Walking all the way there would take far too long. Who knew how many days it would take? Kagami thought for a moment before remembering another option. There was one kind of transportation that didn't mind carrying demons. Alice's face immediately brightened. The decision was made. Not long afterward, they headed into the streets of Valman. Kagami pointed toward a group in the distance. Massive creatures pulled elegant carriages through the streets. These monsters were known as centauros. Their pride was so overwhelming that they barely acknowledged humans as living beings. Then Kagami told Alice to keep watching. A human suddenly cracked a whip. Instead of resisting, the centauros reacted with disturbing excitement. The more they were whipped, the happier they became. Kagami looked completely disgusted. These monsters were extreme masochists who gladly obeyed human commands just for the chance to be whipped. As desperate as the situation was, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. Alice immediately agreed. Just watching them was enough to make her regret looking. She had never even imagined monsters like these existed. The strange encounter reminded her of something else. Kagami seemed to know an unbelievable amount about the world. Kagami casually explained that before reaching level 999, he had traveled almost everywhere. That answer only made Alice even more curious. Level 999. No hero had ever reached such an impossible height. Yet somehow, an ordinary villager had accomplished it. Unable to hold back her curiosity any longer, she asked how he had managed to become so strong. Kagami's answer was surprisingly simple. Effort. Before he could say anything else, Alice quickly stopped herself. If it was a secret, then she didn't want to force him to answer. She had simply been curious. Kagami noticed the disappointed look on her face. He gently reassured her. Anyone would want to know how someone had reached a level that should have been impossible. And the truth behind that mystery was finally about to be revealed. Kagami finally decided to answer the question. How had he reached level 999? The answer sounded almost unbelievable. While saving money to live a peaceful life, he simply kept raising his level along the way. Alice blinked in confusion. That explanation was nowhere near what she had expected. Kagami immediately noticed the disappointed look on her face. To him, the answer was perfectly reasonable. Money mattered. Before Alice could respond, Kagami continued. Money wasn't everything, but it was necessary for almost everything. Food cost money. A home cost money. Even a powerless villager needed money to hire someone strong enough to protect them. The easiest way to earn that money was by defeating powerful monsters. Alice slowly pieced it together. So his endless pursuit of wealth was what eventually led him to his unimaginable level. But that meant risking his life over and over again. Was money really worth all of that? Kagami understood why she thought that. Anyone would assume life became easier after gaining enough wealth and enough power. But reality had turned out differently. As he reflected on the past, his memories drifted back to the Adventurers Guild shop. At the time, he had been wondering if he finally had enough money to buy himself a house. Then something on the shelf completely stole his attention. A mysterious item. No one knew what was inside until after buying it. Price, 10,000 gold. Alice nearly choked. 10,000 gold. She immediately begged him not to waste his money and asked how much he even had back then. Kagami casually answered. Around 5,000 gold. Alice was speechless. That amount alone was enough to buy an enormous estate. Yet Kagami had absolutely no interest in spending it on something practical. He had a dream. To him, the price of the item revealed nothing about its true value. That uncertainty was exactly what made it irresistible. It was a challenge he couldn't walk away from. Alice desperately wished he would stop accepting those kinds of challenges. Kagami only became more excited. For all he knew, that mysterious item could contain the secrets of the entire world. Alice let out a defeated sigh. At this point, she couldn't even tell when Kagami was joking anymore. His answers never seemed simple. Maybe they really couldn't be explained with ordinary logic. Noticing the concern on her face, Kagami quietly admitted that everything had originally started because of money. Alice simply nodded. Then Kagami scratched his head before asking a question of his own. Money really was a strange thing. Alice tilted her head in confusion. Kagami wondered why monsters dropped currency in the first place. Why had something so important to human society become something monsters carried? Alice didn't know how to answer. To her, that had simply always been the way the world worked. Before the conversation could continue, a familiar voice called out to them. Takako had finally found them. Kagami greeted her with a smile before gently taking Alice along. Their conversation would have to wait. It was time for Alice to meet Mino. Takako walked beside Alice and quietly asked if everything had gone well. Alice smiled. There was no need to rush things anymore. Takako watched the two of them together, finding the sight unexpectedly heartwarming. As they walked away, Alice found herself thinking about Kagami's words. They would continue the conversation later. That thought left her wondering just how much longer their journey together would last. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Valman, Mino waited patiently. The moment he spotted Alice, relief washed over him. Alice hurried toward him. Without hesitation, Mino knelt before her. He was simply grateful that she had returned safely. Then guilt overwhelmed him. Despite existing to protect her, he had led an attack against the very town where she had been staying. Alice gently reassured him. There was no need to blame himself. She wasn't upset with him at all. Mino finally realized Kagami had been telling the truth all along. Even so, his gratitude wasn't directed at Kagami. Instead, he gave his heartfelt thanks to the brave people who had been protecting Alice. That was when Takako stepped forward. The moment Mino saw the towering figure, complete confusion took over. Alice immediately rushed to reassure him, explaining that Takako wasn't someone to fear. She even accepted demons without hesitation. Realizing his mistake, Mino quickly apologized. But things only became more awkward. After introducing himself, Mino accidentally assumed Takako was a man. The entire group instantly corrected him. Takako then leaned in with an intimidating smile and formally introduced herself. Faced with the overwhelming pressure, Mino could do nothing except offer another sincere apology. With the introductions finally out of the way, Kagami spread out a map. Since Mino radiated overwhelming demonic energy, sneaking him into populated areas would be impossible. That meant the group would have to continue their journey on foot while keeping him hidden. As everyone listened, Mino remembered something that had been bothering him. Alice's demonic aura was completely impossible to detect. Alice revealed the answer by pulling back her hair and showing the special cloth hidden beneath it. The item completely concealed her demonic presence, making her appear human. She proudly explained that Kagami had made it for her, along with the ribbon she always wore. Thanks to those rare items, she had even managed to enter the town of Valman without anyone suspecting a thing. Mino was stunned. The fact that Kagami had created something so valuable was unbelievable. Kagami admitted the item was incredibly rare, which was why he could only make a single one. That answer only made Mino wonder even more why these humans showed no hatred toward demons. Before anyone could continue the conversation, disaster struck. A giant fireball suddenly came flying straight toward Kagami. He dodged at the last second, but the map in his hands instantly burst into flames. Looking toward the attacker, he found the hero party standing before him. Rex had finally caught up. The heroes immediately accused Kagami of exposing his true nature. Kuru claimed her suspicions had been right all along. Tina realized Kagami's story about Alice being his sister had only been a cover. With both demons standing beside him, there was no longer any room for doubt. To them, Kagami and Takako had become traitors. Kagami could only let out a tired sigh. One enemy after another just kept showing up. Rex declared that Kagami had no way to escape this time. Surrounded on every side, the heroes believed victory was certain. Kagami casually scratched his head before asking why they were so obsessed with surrounding him in the first place. Kuru confidently believed trapping him would leave him nowhere to run. Instead of escaping, Kagami charged directly at her. Before Kuru could even react, he reached her in an instant and lightly tapped her head. Another effortless victory. There was simply no point fighting someone who couldn't possibly win. Rex immediately rushed in and swung his sword. Kagami stopped the blade with ease, almost amused that the heroes had already abandoned their own strategy. Rex refused to back down. But Kagami urged him to stop throwing his life away. Rex insisted that if heroes gave up, then no one would remain to fight evil. Despite all of Rex's recklessness and lack of skill, Kagami couldn't help respecting his courage. He caught Rex's sword with his bare hand and reminded him that a dead hero couldn't save anyone. Rex barely escaped and could only see Kagami as nothing more than a monster. Kagami accepted that title without hesitation. If being a monster meant protecting the people beside him, then he had no problem wearing that label. All he wanted was for the hero party to leave him alone and continue their mission to defeat the Demon King. But the heroes refused. To them, one of the Demon King's subordinates was standing right in front of their eyes. Palna reminded everyone about the countless victims created during yesterday's attack. There was no way they could allow the mastermind behind that tragedy to walk away. Hearing that reasoning, Kagami could only let out another exhausted sigh. For once, he couldn't argue with their logic. Kagami admitted there was no denying the truth. Mino had rampaged through the town. At the very least, he deserved to apologize. Instead of feeling guilty, Mino exploded with anger. From his point of view, demons had suffered endless humiliation because of the previous day's events, so he couldn't understand why he should be the one apologizing. Alice quietly watched the exchange with a troubled expression. Rex refused to accept a simple apology anyway. To him, any demon that endangered human lives was evil. Anyone who sided with demons was no different. In an instant, Kagami closed the distance. He grabbed Rex's sword with one hand and stopped it cold. Then he challenged the very foundation of Rex's beliefs. Who had decided that every demon was evil? Unable to pull his sword free, Rex could only stare in disbelief. Kagami pointed toward Alice. She was standing right there. The daughter of the Demon King. The revelation left the hero party speechless. Kagami reminded Rex that they had crossed paths many times before, yet Rex had never once realized who Alice truly was. Wasn't that proof he had never seen her as completely evil? Rex hesitated. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Kagami admitted that monsters born from demon horns were absolutely dangerous to humans. But beyond that threat, demons themselves were no different from ordinary people. That was exactly why he refused to stand by and watch his demon friends die. With that, Kagami tightened his grip. Rex's sword shattered into pieces. The broken blade hit the ground as the entire hero party froze in shock. Kuru still couldn't overlook one thing. No matter how anyone tried to justify it, Mino had attacked the town. That made him a criminal. Mino remained completely unfazed. Before the situation could escalate again, Kagami grabbed him by the head and forced him into a deep bow. He offered a sincere apology on Mino's behalf. Even Tina was stunned that Kagami actually admitted fault. Kagami explained that Mino had only been following orders. According to Alice, the Demon King himself hadn't been acting like his usual self lately. That statement immediately caught everyone's attention. Kagami revealed something even more unbelievable. He had personally met the Demon King. The entire hero party was left speechless. From what Kagami had seen, the Demon King didn't seem like someone who wanted humanity destroyed. Because of that, he couldn't believe the recent attack had truly been the Demon King's own decision. The Demon King certainly looked frightening. But underneath that appearance, Kagami had felt something entirely different. In fact, he wanted to investigate the Demon King's condition himself. Rex completely rejected the idea. There was no way Kagami could seriously expect anyone to believe such an outrageous story. Kuru agreed without hesitation. To humans, demons had always been their greatest enemy. Kagami answered with a simple question. Had the Demon King's army ever launched an attack against humanity before now? Rex stopped. He searched his memories. The answer was no. Humans had hunted demons whenever they found them. Yet the Demon King had never once retaliated. A terrifying possibility suddenly entered Rex's mind. If Kagami was somehow telling the truth, if the Demon King truly wasn't the monster everyone believed, then what exactly had the heroes been fighting for all this time? Before that thought could take root, Palna stepped forward. She declared that the Demon King was still the enemy. Without hesitation, she began casting another spell. Even Rex was caught off guard. Palna reminded everyone that demons had attacked Valman only yesterday. That fact couldn't be denied. She believed Kagami himself might have been manipulated by the demons. Kagami simply pointed at himself in disbelief. Palna warned the others not to blindly trust anything he said. Unlike Rex and Kuru, she never allowed herself to hesitate. Seeing the growing divide within the hero party, Kagami accepted that nothing more could be accomplished. If they refused to believe him, then this was where they would part ways. The heroes stood frozen. Kagami flashed a grin, grabbed Mino, and took off with the others. The hero party could only watch in complete surprise. That was it. They were actually running away. Tina immediately assumed it proved they had been lying all along. As he fled, Kagami couldn't help thinking that with a little more time, they might have finally understood each other. Maybe next time. The heroes quickly gave chase. While running, Kagami reflected on just how difficult coexistence really was. For humans to live alongside demons, they would have to accept every wound caused by monsters throughout history. It was never going to be easy. Even so, Alice remained optimistic. Unlike before, the heroes had actually listened this time. That tiny bit of hesitation was proof things were changing. Kagami and Takako couldn't help smiling. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As long as Alice refused to give up on her dream, Kagami decided he would stay beside her until the very end. Just then, Mino called everyone's attention forward. A carriage was already waiting. Kagami was completely confused. He had no idea when Mino had managed to arrange that. Then he recognized the creatures pulling it. The same centauros from before glared at him with open contempt. Kagami immediately realized something was wrong. Mino casually admitted he had stolen the carriage from a passing merchant. Since the merchant was still alive, he didn't see any problem with it. Takako quickly figured out that the stolen carriage was probably what had allowed the heroes to track them down. Kagami immediately kicked the carriage in frustration, furious at Mino's complete lack of common sense. With no better option, everyone climbed aboard anyway. Takako grabbed the reins and cracked the whip. The unwilling centauros took off at full speed while Takako laughed with excitement. Meanwhile, Kagami and Alice sat inside the carriage wearing matching looks of complete disgust. Even Mino quietly apologized. Back on the road, the hero party watched the carriage disappear into the distance. Tina pointed out that their enemies had escaped. Rex remained calm. Their destination was the same. Sooner or later, they would cross paths again. Kuru glanced at Rex with concern. He reaffirmed his duty as a hero. Monsters that threatened humanity still had to be defeated. Demons who sought mankind's destruction would never be forgiven. But deep inside, the question Kagami had planted refused to disappear. If there really were demons who wished for peace, then what was the right path for a hero? Before Rex could answer himself, Palna urged the group to move on. They still needed to gather supplies for the long journey ahead. Rex looked at her. Unlike everyone else, she had never shown even the slightest hesitation. When the others questioned her unwavering confidence, Palna simply stood her ground. Not far from the Demon King's castle stood the heavily fortified city of Salmaria. The towering walls immediately left Alice speechless. Compared to Valman, this city was on an entirely different level. Kagami explained that Salmaria's location, so close to the Demon King's castle, forced it to enforce much stricter security than any ordinary town. Even so, if Alice wanted to keep moving forward, he promised to support her all the way. Then his attention shifted to something far more ridiculous. Takako was still riding one of the centauros. Completely unfazed, she proudly praised Kagami while the centauros continued insulting him at every opportunity. By now, Kagami had already accepted that they absolutely despised him. Putting that aside, he gathered everyone to review the plan one last time. Their cover story was simple. They were merchants. During their journey, they had collected the horn of a defeated blue devil. The horn naturally released magical energy, making it the perfect tool to disguise the demonic aura leaking from Mino. Hidden among the goods in the carriage, it would hopefully fool the inspection officers into believing the strange energy came from the merchandise instead. With the strategy explained, Kagami made one final request. He politely asked Takako to climb off the centauros. This time, she actually agreed. At the city gate, the inspection began. The guard questioned them about their business, surprised that ordinary villagers had traveled so close to the Demon King's territory. Kagami smoothly explained that they were merchants who had wisely hired dependable bodyguards for the dangerous journey. Alice proudly presented the Blue Devil's horn while Takako casually greeted the inspector. Even Kagami couldn't help awkwardly emphasizing just how reliable their escorts were. After a thorough inspection, the guard approved everything. Their disguise had worked. Before letting them pass, the inspector mentioned that the city was overflowing with visitors because of an upcoming parade. It was the perfect opportunity for traveling merchants to make a fortune. A parade? That unexpected detail immediately caught Kagami's attention. Inside Salmaria, the streets were packed with performers, decorations, and cheering crowds. The city was alive with celebration. Alice couldn't hide her excitement as she admired the incredible atmosphere. But Kagami wasn't smiling. Takako quickly noticed the change in his expression. After asking around town, Kagami had learned the truth behind the festivities. It left a bitter taste in his mouth. Only a few days earlier, the Demon King's army had attacked Salmaria. Unlike the disaster at Valmon, however, this battle had ended in humanity's favor. That single victory had filled the city with overwhelming confidence. Tomorrow, they planned to officially form a new subjugation force dedicated to attacking the Demon King's territory. Alice froze in shock. Takako immediately compared it to the attack on Valmon. Kagami quietly pointed out something even more disturbing. Until recently, the Demon King's army had never carried out attacks like these. That sudden change was already suspicious enough. Now, after surviving their very first assault, the people of Salmaria believed they had the upper hand. Today's celebration existed because of that dangerous overconfidence. But Kagami knew the reality. The monsters surrounding the Demon King's castle were on an entirely different level. If that newly formed subjugation force marched into those lands, they would be completely annihilated. Even under the best possible outcome, only half of them would ever make it back alive. The more Kagami thought about it, the worse the situation became. The Demon King's army had chosen Salmaria as its first target. If the fighting continued, retaliation would only lead to more retaliation. An endless cycle of war would begin, and the dream of humans and demons living together would disappear before it ever had a chance. Takako noticed the worry on Alice's face. She admitted that stopping the newly formed subjugation force would already be incredibly difficult. And if the Demon King's army attacked again, protecting Salmaria would become nearly impossible. Kagami agreed. The Demon King's castle stood on the island of Atros, a place that contained a spawn block capable of producing monsters of unbelievably high levels. Even worse, the enemy could have been gathering countless monsters in preparation for a full-scale invasion. If the demons truly decided to unleash everything at once, even a fortress like Salmaria wouldn't stand a chance. Takako couldn't deny the possibility. That was exactly why Kagami had come up with a completely different plan. Instead of launching a subjugation force, they would meet the Demon King directly. They would persuade him. Then they would leave together with the entire demon race before the war could spiral any further. Alice and Takako could only stare at him in disbelief. Takako understood his intentions, but the plan sounded unbelievably reckless. She raised the question that mattered most. What if the Demon King truly wanted humanity wiped out? What would Kagami do then? Alice couldn't help thinking the same thing. If her father had really chosen war, before the thought could consume her, Kagami gave his answer. If that happened, he would fight. Alice looked at him in surprise. But Kagami wasn't talking about humans fighting demons. He envisioned something entirely different. Humans and demons standing together as allies. A single united force fighting to protect coexistence itself. Alice, Takako, and Mino were left speechless. An alliance between humans and demons sounded almost impossible. Kagami believed otherwise. Somewhere out there, there had to be people on both sides who were tired of endless bloodshed. If they searched long enough, they would find them. Takako still found it difficult to believe. Even after everything that had happened, could humans and demons truly live together in peace? Before Kagami could answer, Alice did. She realized they had already proven it themselves. The alliance Kagami described already existed. Without hesitation, Alice declared that she would become part of that future. Kagami reminded her what that decision could mean. One day, she might be forced to stand against her own father. Even so, Alice refused to abandon her dream. If the Demon King truly intended to wage war against humanity, she still wouldn't give up on the possibility of peace. Because the moment she abandoned that hope, everything would be over. Kagami gently patted her on the head. Then they would keep fighting for that dream together. Alice's smile immediately returned. She wasn't alone anymore. Turning toward Mino, she wondered where he stood. As one of the Demon King's loyal subjects, Mino knew exactly where his duty should lie. But there was one person he couldn't abandon. Alice. In his excitement, he suddenly jumped out of the moving carriage and loudly declared his loyalty. Everyone immediately panicked. Before disaster could strike, Kagami yanked Mino straight back inside and scolded him for climbing out in the first place. Watching the entire scene unfold, Takako burst into laughter. Then she made her own decision. She wanted to stay with this strange little group as well. Alice couldn't have been happier. With another companion joining them, Kagami welcomed her as part of the team from that day forward. Even the Centauros chimed in. No matter how much they insulted everyone, they admitted they would continue accompanying the group anyway. According to them, the others should be grateful for such loyal escorts. Ignoring the constant insults, Kagami raised his voice with renewed determination. Their next destination was clear. The Demon King's castle awaited, and their impossible journey toward coexistence had only just begun. At the inn in Sal Maria, Kagami admitted that everyone's spirits were high, but he wished they could leave the city as soon as possible. Takako quickly corrected him. Because of the recent attack, the city gates were locked before sunset, and the guards had become far more vigilant than usual. Sneaking out unnoticed simply wasn't an option. Alice reluctantly agreed. Kagami added that drawing attention to themselves would only make things worse. The safest plan was to wait until the gates opened the next morning and leave immediately. Alice pointed out one advantage. The newly formed subjugation force would be enormous, so organizing its departure would take time. If they left as soon as the gates opened, they could reach the Demon King's castle well before the army did. Kagami smiled. That was exactly what he had been thinking. Watching the two calmly work through the situation, Takako couldn't help smiling. She had expected panic. Instead, they were already planning their next move together. Then, without warning, Kagami lifted Alice onto his shoulders. The serious discussion instantly turned into complete nonsense. Takako burst into laughter. Looking at the two of them, it was hard to believe that peace between humans and demons was supposed to be impossible. After clapping her hands to get their attention, Takako decided enough fooling around was enough. Since everyone couldn't safely wander through the city together, she suggested that Kagami and Alice enjoy the parade while the others stayed behind. Alice immediately hesitated. This hardly felt like the right time to celebrate, and she also felt guilty about leaving Mino behind. Takako assured her that Mino had already insisted she shouldn't worry about him. Then she turned toward Kagami. There would be no arguing. He was officially assigned to escort Alice around town. Kagami tried to protest. One look from Takako immediately ended the discussion. Soon, the two of them stepped into Salmeria's lively streets. The parade completely overwhelmed Alice. Performers filled every corner of the city, and the streets buzzed with excitement. Everything was new to her. Everything was amazing. Kagami laughed as Alice became more and more excited, suggesting they calm down and grab something to eat before getting carried away. Instead, something unexpected happened. A performer walked over and handed Alice a balloon simply because she looked adorable. Before she could even process that, a friendly baker offered her fresh bread. Moments later, another vendor insisted she take one of his kebabs as well. Alice could hardly believe it. Once again, complete strangers were showering her with kindness. Kagami laughed. Just like in Valman, people naturally wanted to give her things. Maybe that was a talent all on its own. Alice happily handed the food to Kagami. She wanted them to eat everything together. Kagami was surprised. Was she really sure? Alice explained that Kagami had always been protecting her. If he ate properly, he could keep his strength up. Her simple concern genuinely caught him off guard. Even though she was still a child, her kindness never felt forced. Kagami thanked her but admitted there was no need to worry about his health anymore. He possessed a skill called auto-revive. Minor injuries healed automatically without him needing to do anything. Alice finally understood why Kagami never seemed hurt, no matter how many dangerous situations he faced. To her, he seemed almost unstoppable. Even so, she wanted to become someone who could support everyone too. Kagami smiled and scratched his head. As far as he was concerned, she already had. Before meeting Alice, he had completely given up on the idea that humans and demons could ever coexist. Alice immediately wanted to know what he meant. But before Kagami could answer, something else caught his attention. A plate of spaghetti. His focus vanished instantly. Alice hurried after him, still trying to get him to explain what he had meant. Kagami playfully dodged the question. A familiar voice echoed through the crowd. Palna was complaining about how slowly he ate, while Rex calmly insisted that proper table manners always came first. At that exact moment, Kagami and Rex locked eyes. Silence filled the air. Then Rex shot to his feet. The unexpected reunion had begun. Meanwhile, on the island of Atros, deep within the Demon King's castle, countless monsters silently stood at the ready. Something far greater was already beginning to move. Somewhere in Sal Maria, Kagami froze the moment he spotted the hero again. Instinct took over as he immediately pulled Alice behind him for cover. Across the restaurant, Rex finally had the chance to face the mysterious villager once more, determined to get the answers he had been chasing. Their exchange quickly drew attention, forcing the restaurant's chef to remind everyone to keep their voices down. By the time Rex looked back, Kagami had already disappeared. The sudden escape only fueled Tina's frustration. This was already becoming a pattern, and she was clearly losing patience. Rex wasted no time leading the pursuit, but despite their efforts, Kagami had vanished without a trace. The failed chase sparked another argument within the party. Palna mocked Rex for letting their target slip away again, while Tina suggested informing the townspeople and organizing a search. Rex immediately rejected the idea. He wasn't worried that Kagami would attack innocent people. In fact, that wasn't the problem at all. Before anyone could press further, Kururu stepped in. From her perspective, Kagami had never acted like a villain. During their previous encounter, he could have easily fought back, yet he chose not to. Instead of forcing his beliefs onto them or using overwhelming power, he simply ran away. Palna remained unconvinced. Kururu refused to back down. To her, Kagami had approached them peacefully from the very beginning. The heroes had attacked first, yet he still refused to retaliate. Rex admitted that Kagami often carried himself as if everyone else was beneath him. Even so, cornering someone who clearly wanted to avoid conflict didn't feel right. Watching Kagami desperately flee every encounter left Rex more confused than ever. Palna questioned what that meant. Were they supposed to stop chasing him? Had Rex suddenly decided to side with demons? Rex denied it immediately. His goal hadn't changed. He simply wanted answers. Kururu agreed. The biggest mystery wasn't Kagami himself anymore. It was why someone with unbelievable strength kept protecting demons. The next time they met, she wanted a real conversation instead of another pointless fight. Their mission to defeat demons remained exactly the same. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Salmaria, Kagami and Alice finally slowed down after putting enough distance between themselves and the heroes. Both struggled to catch their breath, surprised that the pursuit had reached them so quickly. Before long, their attention shifted to a lively crowd gathering nearby. The excitement was impossible to ignore. Alice tried to peek over the sea of people, but her height made it nearly impossible. Seeing her struggle, Kagami casually lifted her onto his shoulders, giving her a perfect view of everything happening ahead. Even after everything they had been through, Alice couldn't hide her curiosity. Every new experience in the human world fascinated her. The pair wandered through the festival until Kagami stopped at a nearby stall and bought some ice cream. The first bite completely amazed Alice. She couldn't believe humans had created something so delicious. The treat left such an impression that she immediately wished every demon could experience food like this one day. Before they could enjoy the moment any longer, a wave of excitement swept through the streets. People rushed toward another gathering, eager not to miss whatever was about to begin. Curious, Alice followed the crowd with Kagami close behind. Then she spotted what looked like a monster. The audience erupted with cheers as warriors charged toward the creature, turning the entire scene into a spectacle. Confused by everyone's excitement, Alice looked to Kagami for an explanation. The answer was far simpler than she expected. It wasn't a real battle at all. It was a festival performance, where warriors put on a show by defeating a harmless monster for the entertainment of the crowd. A deafening explosion suddenly echoed through the festival, instantly silencing the crowd. Everyone turned toward the source, only to find a massive monster standing in the middle of the streets. At first, some spectators assumed it was part of the performance. The show had looked convincing enough that many believed the organizers had simply stepped up their game. Then the monster attacked. Its claws tore through the crowd, and panic spread in an instant. The screams made it painfully clear that this was no act. Kagami immediately pulled Alice behind him, refusing to let her get anywhere near the chaos. At the same time, he quickly weighed his options. His strongest attack required time to build up enough energy, and right now, he didn't have that luxury. As another terrified civilian found themselves directly in the monster's path, Kururu rushed forward without hesitation. A radiant barrier erupted around them, stopping the monster's charge for only a brief moment. The impact was overwhelming. The shield shattered under the force, sending both Kururu and the civilian crashing into a nearby wall. Even after taking the hit, Kururu refused to back down. The frightened civilian urged her to abandon him and save herself. She stood her ground anyway. As a noble, protecting innocent people came before her own life. She refused to sacrifice others just to survive. But when the monster closed the distance, reality finally caught up with her. Her body froze. Fear rooted her to the spot as the monster raised its claws for the finishing blow. Then, at the very last second, a single hand caught the monster's attack. Kagami had stepped between them. Even Kururu couldn't hide her shock. Without wasting another second, Kagami gathered his strength into one swift strike and unleashed charge blow. The punch smashed straight through the monster's face. The enormous creature flew backward, crashing through the street from the sheer force of the impact. Kururu collapsed to her knees, still trying to process what had just happened. Kagami casually reminded her that this time, she had earned a perfect score in his book. By buying him those precious few seconds, she had given him enough time to prepare the attack that ended the fight in a single blow. Before the moment could settle, the rest of the hero's party arrived. Tina immediately recognized the overwhelming fighter. Level 999. Kagami couldn't help but joke that those words were supposed to be his line instead. Rex immediately grabbed hold of him, determined not to let him disappear again. His mind was filled with questions. The monster they had just witnessed was incredibly powerful, yet Kagami had defeated it with nothing more than charge blow. A basic skill. Kagami calmly explained that it happened to be the fastest technique he could activate. That answer only left Rex even more stunned. He wanted a real conversation this time, and Kagami finally agreed. But before discussing anything, Kagami insisted they first confirm there weren't any more monsters roaming through the city. Kuru slowly stepped forward before grabbing both of Kagami's hands in gratitude. She sincerely thanked him for saving her life. Kagami brushed off the praise, giving the credit back to her. If she hadn't held the monster back, he never would have gathered enough energy to finish it in a single attack. Watching the exchange, Palna couldn't help noticing that Kagami would save anyone, whether they were human or demon. Kagami made his position perfectly clear. He wasn't fighting for either side. He considered himself completely neutral. Before anyone could continue the conversation, a frantic man sprinted toward the group, desperately shouting for everyone to run. Kagami immediately questioned the warning, assuming more monsters had entered the city. The man shook his head. The situation was far worse. A gigantic horde from Alstoro Island was already marching towards Salmaria. Nearly 10,000 monsters. For the first time, even Kagami's eyes widened in disbelief. The messenger declared that the city had no chance of surviving what was coming next. The messenger desperately repeated his warning. A massive horde of monsters was already on its way to Salmaria. Alice instinctively tried to deny it, but the terrified man insisted it was true. Nearly 10,000 monsters were marching straight toward the city. Without wasting another second, Kagami turned to Rex. He ordered the hero to begin evacuating the townspeople immediately while he searched for the rest of his companions as fast as possible. Then he made an even more shocking request. He asked Rex to protect Alice. The entire hero party was stunned. Rex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Demons were supposed to be humanity's greatest enemies, yet Kagami wanted to leave one in their care. If they decided to kill her, there would be nothing he could do. Kagami remained completely serious. If Rex had truly intended to harm Alice, he never would have trusted him with such a request in the first place. Besides, Rex had wanted a chance to talk with him. This was proof that Kagami believed he could be trusted. Palna wasn't convinced. To her, it almost sounded like Kagami didn't care what happened to Alice once he left. For the first time, Kagami's calm expression broke. He desperately pleaded with them to keep Alice safe. The sincerity in his voice left the group unable to refuse. As Kagami disappeared into the distance, Tina couldn't help noticing how desperate he had sounded. Palna looked at Alice, believing she had simply been abandoned. Alice immediately shook her head. She knew that wasn't what had happened. Kagami had placed his complete faith in the heroes. Because he believed in them, she chose to believe as well. Her unwavering trust deeply moved Kuru. Even so, Alice couldn't stop worrying about the enormous monster army closing in on the city. Sensing her fear, Kuru gently wrapped her in a comforting hug. She assured Alice that everything would be fine. They had made a promise to protect her, and they intended to keep it. After all, Alice had never shown herself to be dangerous. Palna quickly reminded everyone that there wasn't time to dwell on emotions. Every second mattered now. Kuru nodded and encouraged Alice to help evacuate the townspeople. The heroes split up. Rex focused on eliminating monsters that had already appeared, while the others raced through the streets alongside Alice, warning every civilian they could find. Again and again, they shouted the same message. During the frantic escape, falling debris suddenly came crashing toward Alice. Rex reacted instantly, shielding her before it could strike. Kuru quickly checked to make sure she was unharmed, and Alice thanked them both. Just as Rex began reminding her to stay alert, an angry voice suddenly echoed across the street. Takako and Mino had arrived. They rushed straight toward Alice, demanding to know if she was safe. Rex immediately recognized them as the companions Kagami had gone to find. Trying to identify Takako, Rex casually referred to her as a muscular man. The comment instantly brought everything to a halt. Alice quickly corrected him. Takako wasn't a man. She was a woman. Rex completely froze, struggling to process what he had just heard. Meanwhile, Takako eyed the hero party with suspicion, clearly unimpressed by the strange group surrounding Alice. At the same time, Mino stepped forward, demanding that they release Alice immediately. Alice immediately ran toward Mino the moment she saw him. Rex stopped them before anyone could misunderstand the situation. Even with Alice's horns hidden, he could still sense her demonic aura. He explained that Kagami had personally entrusted Alice to the hero party before leaving. Takako was caught off guard. Kagami had done what? Rex quickly explained everything that had happened since they separated. After hearing the full story, Takako finally understood. Without hesitation, she decided they would search for Kagami as well. There was only one road leading to the inn, so something must have happened if he still hadn't returned. Meanwhile, Rex grew increasingly frustrated. Where had that mysterious villager disappeared to this time? Before anyone could continue searching, a terrified man came sprinting through the streets, desperately calling for help. Someone was holding back an entire monster horde at the city's west gate. Everyone else had already escaped. Only one person remained behind. A lone villager was fighting the monsters completely alone. Alice's heart immediately sank. If that person really was Kagami, he was facing certain death. As panic spread, Alice finally understood what Kagami had intended from the very beginning. If humans watched demons slaughter innocent people again, any hope of coexistence would disappear forever. Kagami had chosen to protect both sides, all by himself. Without another thought, Alice sprinted toward the west gate. Takako instantly chased after her. Instead of letting Alice run on foot, she lifted the small demon onto her shoulders to move even faster. Alice pleaded with her to hurry. Kagami might possess incredible recovery abilities, but even he couldn't fight an entire army forever. Takako agreed. She called for Mino and ordered him onto the rooftops. Crossing the city from above would be much faster than fighting through the crowded streets. Even for Kagami, this wasn't a battle anyone could survive alone. Only a complete fool would attempt something like that. Rex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did Kagami actually have a death wish? Alice was just as surprised when Rex started following them. Takako questioned whether the hero was seriously coming to help. Rex answered without hesitation. After hearing that someone was risking everything to protect the city alone, there was no way he could simply stand by and watch. More than anything, he couldn't understand why Kagami had charged into battle without any allies beside him. Takako already knew the answer. Kagami wanted to prevent casualties on both sides. He didn't want humans to die. He didn't want demons to die either. Rex could hardly believe it. Trying to stop an army like that alone wasn't courage. It was suicide. Takako admitted it sounded reckless. But as long as even a 1% chance of success remained, Kagami would never give up. Rex argued that bravery and recklessness weren't the same thing. Takako corrected him immediately. For Kagami, protecting the people he cared about came before everything else. Fear for his own life simply didn't exist. Rex quietly admitted that he had prepared himself to face death as well. Takako shook her head. That wasn't what she meant. Before Rex could ask another question, Mino suddenly came to an abrupt stop at the entrance to the west gate. Everyone looked ahead. The sight completely stunned them. The battlefield was covered with monster corpses. Every creature near the gate had already been slaughtered. Rex stood frozen. How could something like this even be possible? Farther ahead, Kagami remained standing alone. An endless sea of monsters still surrounded him from every direction. Alice immediately called out to him. At that exact moment, a gigantic snake monster lunged straight at Kagami. Without even flinching, he caught the creature with his bare hands and ripped it clean in half. The horrifying display left everyone speechless. Rex stared in disbelief. The overwhelming strength before his eyes no longer resembled that of an ordinary human. This was the true power of a level 999 villager.